So fasten your seatbelts, and before I bring Eric up here, I want you to check this out.
I deserve a job after graduation because I earned it.
I deserve a job because I pay a lot of money to go to college.
I am entitled to a job because I've worked hard and gone to school.
Do you deserve a job after you graduate? Absolutely.
I deserve it. I'm in grad school now.
An employer owes me a good job, decent benefits so that I can live, and health insurance.
A little over $25 an hour.
$30,000 to $40,000 a year.
At least 40,000.
Oh, at least 60,000.
70 to 80,000 a year.
Like 100 grand, yeah.
I deserve 7 figures per year.
At the Roxy Boy.
I am an employer.
I am an employer.
I am an employer, and I have jobs.
Good jobs.
Good job. And I'm hiring.
But if you want to work for me,
you need to know how I really feel.
You see, I am entitled.
I am entitled.
I am entitled.
I'm entitled to you arriving here to the job on time.
Every day until the very last minute of your shift.
And if you're scheduled at 9
and arrive at 9,
you're late.
I am entitled to you being positive and enthusiastic as you approach the task you are assigned.
Regardless of what they are.
Or anything that may have happened to you before you came to work.
I get it. I have no right to say how you dress, communicate, or act on your own time.
However, while you're at work, I'm entitled to you being a professional.
And acting and speaking like one.
Showing up dressed and groomed in a way that best represents this organization.
And the image that we need to project to our clients and to the world.
I'm entitled to you doing the work you are paid to do to the very best of your ability.
And then some.
The only way this business is going to grow
and provide opportunity for you to grow with it
is if you're continually looking for ways to excel,
achieve,
solve problems,
and add value whenever and wherever you can.
I'm entitled to your respect for my rules, whether or not you agree with them.
I want you to enjoy working here and like your managers.
But that's not a condition of your willingness to follow company policies.
I am entitled to the truth.
And yes, I can handle the truth.
So if you're not ill, please don't call in sick.
If you handle money or merchandise, every cent must be accounted for.
If you lie, cheat, steal, fudge,
or hook a buddy up,
even once,
the trust I need to have in you will forever be in question.
But it's our customers who are even more entitled.
They're the ones who pay our wages and keep this business running.
That entitles them to fast, friendly, and courteous service
from everyone in this organization.
So you need to go out of your way to show them how much we appreciate their business.
So if you agree to this list of entitlements, then you're not only entitled to a paycheck.
You're entitled to me living up to these same high standards.
But hey, if you feel like we're asking for too much,
then you're entitled to look for another employer that will not ask these things of you.
So please join me in welcoming Eric Chester.
Thank you. Thank you. The first 2 rows empty brings me back to the classroom. So you just saw a video, and you saw what students thought and what employers thought. And you know who's in the middle between the students and the employers? Look to your right, look to your left. We're standing in the gap, preparing people for that next step that we call work or a career. Now there's a handout inside each and every one of your packets. It's got my name in the upper right-hand corner, and it's got CTE in the left-hand corner. You'll need that because I'm going to ask you to take the top blank on the left-hand side, right under where it says CTE, has the Minnesota CTE logo, right underneath that. I want you to write your job title, right? Your job title, as you would be introduced maybe at a cocktail party, or something that you would write down on a resume if you were applying for a job. Your present, your current job title. So right there in the upper left-hand corner of that CTE handout, simply just write down how you would be introduced, what your current job title is. See, I looked at today a little bit different. As explained in my introduction Michelle gave, I've always been in the space of school to work transition. You know, helping people figure out that next step in life, even if they had no idea what that next step was really all about. School to work transition. I think we're all in that same space, but today we're going to tip it on its ear. In fact, we're going to reverse it, throw it upside down. We're going to go from career back to school. I want you to think back to your days in school. In fact, your final days in school. I want you to think of your final day in high school. That day, you woke up and somewhere in your bedroom, there was a satin or a silk robe in a plastic garment bag. You got up and you took a shower, you put your clothes on. The next thing you know, you put on this robe and then a funky hat that looked more like an upside-down pizza box. And you went to school, and sure enough, all the people that you had been to school with for the past 4, maybe 6, maybe 12 years looked just like you. And you were rushed with a surge of emotions. Today was going to be a different day, a day that you would remember forever. It was the final day. You started exchanging hugs, comments with the people you'd been to school with for so long. There was pageantry, and then there were some speeches by the smart kids. I didn't give one of those speeches. At some moment, some guy came to the front of the stage, and he began reading a list of the classmates alphabetically. And when you heard your name crossed, you crossed the platform, you got your handed your diploma, you heard the cheers from your family and your friends, and then everybody tossed their cap and gown in the air. And the next thing you know, your family and friends, they rushed up to see you when it was all over, and they said, "Hey, congratulations, now it's over. What are you going to do for the rest of your life?" And you said, "I'm so glad you asked, because I am going to be a..." Look right now on the line that you wrote your job title on. Laughter? Aren't we all in this career thing? We're helping people figure career out. So we naturally knew what our career was going to be, right? Maybe not. Maybe we're a little confused about what this thing career really means. In fact, maybe it's the advice that we're giving our kids. Maybe you heard some of these things. Like, follow your passions. Find do what you love and find your dream job. Now, if you think about it, dreams, passion, love sounds more like a smutty romance novel than it does career advice. But maybe it leads people to believe that work has to always be something that you love. Do you love your job? Every single minute of every day? Do you just pinch yourself and say, "I can't believe I get to do this," and look at your job title again? Or have you discovered that sometimes work just isn't fun? Maybe there's some elements. You might have to start at the bottom, right? Maybe you wind up in tight quarters from time to time. Or you have to hang on to that job for dear life, right? Maybe there's some aspects about the job nobody told you about when you took it. Could there be an element of danger involved? Come on, face it. Every once in a while, work stinks, doesn't it? So here's what we need to do. We need to find out what everyone is really looking for. If we stand in the gap between the students who are in our programs and the employers, the people that are going to inherit our students, we got to figure out how do we bridge that gap. And I think it starts by not just understanding the student's perspective, but understanding the employer's perspective. So put your employer hat on. Imagine you had a couple of the people that you fill the gap for, and you ask them, what is it you're really looking for in the people that you bring into your programs? If you answered for them, what kind of people are you trying to recruit into your organization? How would they respond? Here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you 30 seconds. I want you to use the words that they would tell you. This is the kind of person that's successful in our organization. I just want you to come up with 5 words. 30 seconds. Here we go. Ready, go. The timer's on. Get the 5 words. Work independently. What 5 words do you think they're going to tell you? What are they looking for? What are they looking for? Stop. Doesn't matter if you have 5 words down. I just want you to look at your list right there, and then let's classify these words. Put them into 1 or 2 buckets. In fact, by each one of those words, there's a little blank to the left of it. In the blank that's to the left of that, I want you to put down an S if you believe that happens to be a trainable skill. Put a CV if you believe it happens to be a core value. Just look at the list of words you just wrote down. Are they skills? Are they core values? Just go ahead and put beside each one what you would classify that as, and then we'll take a little survey, okay? The survey is how many people in here right now, looking at your list, have 5 S's down on your page? No one. 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, how many people have 3 or more core values? Raise your hand. Look around the room. 4 or more, 5 or more. You see, they say we have a core values gap in America, or a skills gap. We don't have a skills gap. We have a core values gap, right? We have a core values gap. I just left the nerdery. If you haven't heard of the nerdery, it has become famous for being a great place to work. In fact, the Star Tribune and the Minneapolis Business Journal have awarded the nerdery the best place to work 3 out of the past 5 years. They're winning acclaim as a great place to work. You know, it was started 10 years ago. Started 10 years ago by 3 techies, nerds, who didn't set out to build a gigantic company. They didn't set out to make a whole lot of money. You know what they wanted to do? They wanted to create a company that they would like to work for. And doing that, they've created this high-tech firm of 500 nerds that work at a place called the Nerdery. It is fascinating. I got to do a little video tour. You know, I'm going to be posting that online in terms of what the Nerdery is all about. And in interviewing the CEO, I asked, what makes this a great place to work? Why, if you were competing for nerds right now, how would you go about getting them? He goes, we can teach anybody the technical skills. You know what we want? We want the core values. That's really what we're looking for. You see, it's not just the Nerdery. It's not just McDonald's. It's not just Alcoa, Wells Fargo, or Harley Davidson, some of my clients. Just about everybody fills out the paper the same way you do. They go, what we're looking for are these core values, right? So what are they? Well, I've talked to 1,500 different business owners, leaders, managers, and asked them the same question, and I bet you I can guess what you have on your papers. Because when people start writing, they all typically tend to write along the same way. People that have been out there and been experienced, one of the things they always say is, you know, we want people who are going to be, you know, enthusiastic and cheerful and happy and positive. We want to bring positive people into the workplace. We're tired of hiring people who are negative, you know, who brighten the workplace up when they leave. Right? So maybe you have a word that equates with friendly, cheerful, gregarious, happy, outgoing, positive. Thumbs up if you do. Say amen. Okay. Another word I hear all the time is we want people who are reliable. It doesn't matter how good you are in your job. If you don't show up, you're not doing us much good. We need people who are going to be here and be here on time, right? Punctual. In the real world of work, you don't get, quote, me time, right? It's like we need you and we need you here on time because that's the way we run our business. So we need an element of reliability. Another thing we need, we're hiring professionals. Now what does professional mean? It means that you've got to put the company's image above your own. It's the words that you say, the way that you conduct yourself. You're acting like a professional. Now, we all have a personal life, but if I knocked on your door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning, I doubt you would come to the door dressed as you are right now. Little name tag on and everything. See, the reason you look like you do now is because you knew you were coming to this conference and you wanted to represent your school, your institution, your organization, your county in a way that said, look, I'm a professional. And we, business people, say we want people to be a professional. We don't want you to come walking in here with fuzzy bedroom slippers and a big t-shirt that says my inner child is a nasty bastard. Hey, that may be true, but this is not the place. So please be a professional. And man, we want people who are going to go above and beyond, right? Who are going to take initiative, not just do the minimum daily requirement. When did it all of a sudden become acceptable for an employee to say, look, I may not be the best, but at least I'm better than Jason. Don't blame me. She was late too. When did it become acceptable just to be good enough not to get fired? Employers, they want people who are going to go above and beyond, who see something that needs to be done and say, I can do that. I can learn that. I want to become better. I want to add value. I want to grow with this company or organization because I know how to add value. We definitely need people who are going to respect our rules and our culture, who aren't going to fight everything we ask them to do, who are going to jump in and go, you know, there's a certain way you do things around here, and I don't have to tell you what's what from day one. So it doesn't matter whether or not I like my manager or even like the rule. These are the rules of the game. I got to abide by them. And boy, we need people we can trust. You ask employers, I've asked this all the time, wouldn't you rather an employee calls in well, saying, my, it's a beautiful day outside. I wonder if the fish are biting. I got to go play some golf. You can't expect me to come into work today when it's this nice outside. Wouldn't you rather have an employee call in well than call in sick and the next day come in with a raccoon tan and you go, really? You see, it's the same result, but in one situation, you can trust your employee. And that's the basis. That's the basis of a great employer-employee relationship. And last but not least, they say we're looking for people who understand a little something about customer service, whether your customers are internal or external. You've got to have that gratitude, not just, well, this is the best job I could get, or I can't wait to get out of here, or I'm just working in the fast food industry. But somebody says, I was born to work here, and I'm going to show it. I'm going to show it with everything that I have. You see, being positive is great, but that's the way you feel on the inside. Gratitude is the active demonstration of that on the outside. So regardless of what occupation you were thinking about a moment ago when I said put on your employer hat and pretend you're them, whatever field that's in, whatever industry, which of these would you hire without? If I could bring you people that were outstanding in 6 but lacking in the 7th, which one would you say, well, that one we could do without in this company or in this organization? I mean, would you say, well, we can do without the people who are honest? Of course not. Oh, the people that don't show up? The people that are unprofessional? The people that are negative? See, what I found out is that every single one of those are in high demand by every single company and every organization, regardless if we're talking at the entry level all the way to the C-suite. So what's happening? If those are being mentioned so frequently, maybe it's because they're deficient in the workplace. Now, one reason is the declining number of teens who are actually in the workforce. If you were a teenager back in the 80s, raise your hand. A teenager back in the 80s? So how many of you were teenagers back in the 80s had jobs when you were a teenager? Raise your hand. Okay, so here's what just about everybody said, yeah, that was me. Well, you know, back in according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, back in 1989, over 56% of all teen workers between the ages, or teenagers between the ages of 16 and 19 were actively involved in the workplace. But you see that number has changed. You move forward to 2013, the number has dropped to only 33%. Only 33% of those eligible to work between 16 and 19 actually have jobs. And sadder is the number of minority students in urban areas that are actually involved in the workplace. So where do you learn to work? Well, some people say we're supposed to learn to work at work. And those that didn't learn to work at work, maybe we learned to work at home because we had parents. We had parents who wanted to make sure my dad was a Depression-era baby. I'll never forget, man, in my house, if you wanted a car, you had to buy your own car. Your parents were just going to hand you the car keys when you turned 16 years of age. That meant you had to find a place that was close enough to walk to or ride your bike that you could get a job to earn and save your money so you could buy your own car. And even though they were jalopies, they were just, to you, they were that Lamborghini, right? Right? 1964 Plymouth Barracuda was smashed on one side. Can anybody relate? I think I washed that thing like every day because I was so proud. $200, but I had to spend my own money to get that car, and to get that car, I had to find a job, and the job for me, 2 words: Baskin Robbins. Close enough to where I live. I liked ice cream, and I could meet chicks. Popped inside a Baskin Robbins. I said, I'd like to apply for a job. You know what they said? This is back in 1973. I said, we're not hiring. I went home and told my dad, Depression-era baby, Dad, not hiring at the Baskin Robbins. Can I use your car? Well, my dad decided it was time we had a little talk. Turned out to be more of a shared monologue. Dismissed my 4 sisters and sat down and once again told me the story. Growing up in Raleigh, North Carolina, height of the Depression, his father had passed away from a stroke. There wasn't enough food to go around. His mom was working 2, 3 jobs. My dad had to drop out of school in 10th grade to find odd jobs just to help the family survive. By the time he was 18 years of age, by golly, he knew there was a better place to live than Raleigh, North Carolina, and he had heard about this magical place, Chicago, Illinois. So he knew that's where he wanted to live. He sold all his worldly possessions and he bought a one-way bus ticket. Took him 3 days to get from Raleigh to Chicago. And he stepped off that bus on the morning of January the 28th, 1939, as an 18-year-old kid with a nickel in his pocket and the clothes on his back. And instead of finding hope and opportunity, he saw a lot of people huddled around trash cans that had been set on fire, just trying to keep their hands warm. There were long lines of people waiting for bread, government assistance, and any mention of a job drew hundreds of candidates. You see, my father had to find work just to survive, and he was going to make darn sure that his only son knew how to find a job. The fact that Baskin-Robbins wasn't hiring was not going to be a deterrent to me working there. He said, son, you got to stand out. You can't just go into Baskin-Robbins like you got nothing better to do. Do your research, do your homework, find out who owns Baskin-Robbins, find out who owns that Baskin-Robbins. Go in and solve his problems. And then I said something really stupid. How do I do that, Dad? Which launches us into about another 3 hours of conversation. By the time he was done, I was ready because I did a couple of days of my homework and I went back inside Baskin-Robbins, 1973, asked for Mr. Alvin Harrison, who was a franchise partner of that Baskin-Robbins. Mr. Harrison came to the front counter. Yeah, kid, what do you want? Mr. Harrison, my name is Eric Chester. I'm here to scoop ice cream for you to delight your customers and improve your profits. He handed me an application. Maybe he thought I was going to go home, but I was ready. I had brought a clipboard and a pen. I sat down and I filled it in its entirety. It was a Picasso by the time it was done. I handed it back to Mr. Harrison. While he was looking it over, I said, Mr. Harrison, we need to talk about these employment opportunities. May I have an interview, sir? All right, kid, what time are you out of school? I said 3 o'clock. He goes, why don't you come back tomorrow around 4? I was there at 3:45 because my dad said if you're on time, you're 15 minutes late. And I showed up wearing a tie to work at Baskin-Robbins. And I came alone. I did not bring my posse. My heart was racing when he invited me back for the interview. And when I went into his office, I stood until he invited me to sit. With my father's words echoing inside my head, don't let your shoulder blades touch the back of that chair. You lean forward, put a smile on your face, and you begin to answer all his questions with complete enthusiastic responses. Well, yes, I can, Mr. Harrison, absolutely. No job is too big or too small. I am the man for that job. And that's just when he asked me where I lived. Time to dazzle him with my knowledge. And I did, because I had memorized all 31 flavors. Alphabetically. He was impressed. Time to move him for the close. Mr. Harrison, I want to scoop ice cream for you to delight your customers and improve your profits. Sir, when do I start? He said, well, can you come in tomorrow? I went home and I told my mom she'd make me a celebration meal. She picked up the phone. She called my father, who came home 20 minutes early from work. And I was out in the driveway shooting hoops with my buddy, and his big old Buick pulls up into the driveway, and this 6'6", 260-pound man comes running toward me, picks me up like a load of mashed potatoes, turned me around and said, that's a chip off the old block. And then without releasing his grip on my neck, he said, and if you get fired, don't come home. Because you see, our kids, our parents wanted to make sure we knew how to work. How do people work? Candy from Fond du Lac, where are you, Candy? Candy from Fond du Lac this morning, she was just telling me, standing outside by the table, she says, you know, we have these jobs in this rural community. We can get people connected, but the employers say these people don't know how to work. Nobody's ever really taught them how to work. What's supposed to happen? Well, I visited 1,500 different schools, and I can tell you that most people's opinions about what a school really can do. If the parents aren't teaching people to work, can they learn to work at school? Do we take the kids, do we put them into a building and just hope that they come out as graduates? Because most people see education that way, and you know what the ultimate goal is? The ultimate goal is that kid goes on to college. Because if they go on to college, guess what? Game over. But that's not the way we look at it. I think everybody in here looks at it differently. Going to 1,500 different schools, every time I go in front of a school, I pull up, and to me it's a factory. It's a factory that we put raw materials in, and that factory is completely, totally responsible for the product that comes out at the end of that. Now, granted, we want them to graduate, but it's not just, do they just move on to a bigger school? The question, and I think the question being answered by career and tech educators, is what happens down the road. That's where the rubber meets. What happens down there when they get out into the community? What happens? Do they have successful careers? Are they involved in their community? Are they good parents, good people? You see, what happens, the effectiveness is not just can we get them into college, but what happens down there. And what happens down there is completely and totally tied to the words you have down on your sheet of paper right now. The words you wrote down that some people refer to as soft skills. But I look at it as different than soft skills. These are core work ethic values. So working with organizations now who are really deficient, they wanted a resource. I couldn't find one for them. I had to write my own. So I wrote this book. This book is called Reviving Work Ethic, A Leader's Guide to Ending Entitlement, Restoring Pride in the Emerging Workforce. And I had to really figure out, how do we inculcate those core values in people? How do you do that? Well, before I even did that, you had to kind of come up with a definition of what work ethic is, because you ask 10 different people, they're going to give you 10 different responses to what work ethic is. I mean, what does it really mean? It's not in the dictionary, unless you break it up into 2 words. And that's what I did. I consulted Webster's. Let's start with the second word first. The second word is ethic. And ethic comes from the word ethos, which is a Latin word, and it relates to, your knowledge of what's right or wrong. Whether or not you have this guiding philosophy, a set of moral principles, that's based upon your ethic. I have a 9-week-old grandson. I can promise you right now he has no ethic. He has no ethic because he has no knowledge. Really, when it comes to it, your ethic is based upon that which you know. Now, work is very different. Work, as Webster defines, is based upon an activity, right? A sustained effort to achieve a result. Next time you see a colleague or maybe some young person standing looking out the window and you go, "What are you doing?" And they go, "Well, I'm working." You say, "Well, technically you're not." Because to work means that you're doing something. You see, that's what work is. Work is just doing. You know what work ethic is? Don't overthink it. Work ethic is knowing what to do and doing it. It's just knowing what to do and doing it. Now, it's still on your mind, you don't get it. Well, it's one of those things that you kind of know innately. I mean, when you're out there and you're looking, you know work ethic when you see it, right? You know it when you see it. But you also know it when you don't. Feel me? Right? Know what I'm talking about? Every employer, and perhaps you might see things from an employer's perspective when they meet this employee, because from here on out, you'll be looking, going, what do these people know? And what is it that they don't know about these words I've just written down on this sheet of paper? These soft skills. But it's not just what they know or don't know. What are they going to do? And what aren't they going to do? Based upon that which they know and what they don't know. And at the intersection of their cognizance between know and don't know and their compliance of what they will do and not do, we can learn a whole lot about this work ethic or lack thereof that drives so many employers absolutely crazy. Because there's 4 distinct quadrants of human performance. First of all, you have those people who don't know what to do and they don't do anything. And when you have people who don't know what to do and they don't do anything, they're in a quadrant I call the idle quadrant. Have you heard of American Idol? This is a different kind, right? Doesn't matter what somebody's resume says. Doesn't matter what experiences they have. If they come into the workplace and they don't really know what to do and they don't do anything, they're not of much value. They are idle. But maybe they've got a decent work ethic and they look around, try to make themselves useful, waiting for training. They may even pick up a broom, mop, do something to make the place better. They didn't know what to do, but they did something. And when you don't know what to do and you do something and it turns out to be right, you are lucky. Unlucky is good, it's just not sustainable. Now, the quadrant of behavior that drives almost every employer right up a tree is that lower right-handed quadrant, where people know what to do, but they don't do it. Because when you know what to do and you don't do it, you are cheating. And cheating puts you squarely at odds with your employer. You knew you were supposed to be there at 9, but you didn't show up. You went through the back door about 9:08. You knew the protocol for what uniform you were supposed to wear or when to turn in that expense report, but you just cut the corners a little bit. You knew you weren't supposed to hook that buddy up with a pizza, but hey, nobody was around. What the heck? It's just going to get thrown in the trash anyway, right? So you start justifying it, you wind up in the cheating quadrant. But no matter what, every employer, where they really want their people is in that final remaining quadrant, where they know what to do and they do it. Because when you know what to do and you do it, you have value, right? You not only have the core values, you are of value to your employer. And see, that requires leadership. It really does. Because we can't just hire people who are in the valued quadrant. Wouldn't it be great if in our factory we could just attach the values, they graduate, they got the core values, then we could say game over. But that's not the way it works. Because oftentimes when you see this, what people do is go, well, I just want to hire in the valued quadrant. Well, you can hire, but that doesn't mean someone's going to stay there, because this is a continuum. People are constantly moving in and out. These aren't labels for people. These are states of behavior that people move in and out of. You see, we've all been all four of those things. We've been idle. We've been lucky. And yes, you've cheated. If you've ever driven 1 mile an hour over the posted speed limit, you've cheated. You ever torn a tag off a mattress or a box spring? It clearly says on there, do not remove under penalty of the law. You've cheated. But if you really want to have value to your employer, and if you want to be an employer that has valued employees, then you got to be part teacher, where you're constantly moving people over, where they're constantly learning every single day. Because people in an organization, I tell you this all the time, once you've got people who say, I know everything, they're on their way out. Nobody wants to stay in an organization where they know everything. So we constantly got to be teaching. We're part teacher, but you got to be part motivator. Because you can't just tell people what to do. You got to motivate them to do it. And when you teach people what to do and you become that part motivator, then you're 100% mentor. And you're standing in that valued quadrant yourself, pulling up people every single day. Part teacher, part motivator, 100% mentor. That's where the greatest leaders are. You want to pull people in that valued quadrant, you got to be there yourself. And I'd love to say it's a one and done process. If you've got 10 people that work for you, do it 10 times, you're done. You got 20 students in class, do it 20 times, it's over. First of all, it's a continuum. And what's working against us is gravity. It's harder now than ever before to stay a valued, principled person, because everything we think, see, and do seems to work against us. It used to be easy to tell who the good guys were. If you were into television or movies like I was when I was a kid, I knew who to cheer for. The good guys always won, right? They wore the white hats. They put the team above themselves. They put the family above team. They put God and country above everything. You know what? The lines are blurred. We don't know who to cheer for anymore, do we? Sometimes it's the bad guy that's the good guy, because the good guy's the bad guy. Maybe we really don't know. Maybe we want to play video games where we're not the good guy, we're the bad guy, and we can just get away with it. And so in a world of deception where the lines have been blurred, it's harder than ever to be an educator that's trying to inculcate core values that the organization wants and that will serve the student well, and yet the world is fighting against us every single day. Our job is not an easy one. How do you get people into that up and over quadrant? That becomes the question. I don't have all the answers. In fact, I'm not here to answer your questions. I'm here to get you to question your answers. Because I feel a special connection every time I get in front of career and tech educators. That's what my master's is in. I was a classroom teacher, but only for 6 years. So there's a lot more knowledge and experience in front of me today than there is in front of you. But the cool thing about visiting 1,500 different schools and colleges and working all of these companies and organizations is if you realize you got 2 ears and 1 mouth and you listen twice as much as you talk, you figure out some really cool ideas. So I'd like to share some with you, some ideas I've learned from other people that perhaps maybe will help you in your mission to inculcate the core values in the students that you have to make them more successful in the workplace and better people. And could there be a better goal? So what we're going to do is kind of look at some of the challenges and how we solve those challenges. One of the organizations I worked with was really struggling with customer service. Now, a lot of customer service in America is really pathetic, but this organization nailed it. We really have people who don't understand the customer service equation. And what's really struggling is, or what's really pathetic to us is that these people make their living by giving good customer service. They get tips. So why? Why do they feel that way? Help us boost customer service. So you know what I did? I walk in with my little iPhone and I turn on my video camera and I start talking to employees. And this one young lady, I asked her, her name was Carolyn, and I asked her about her views on customer service. Tell me about customer service in your restaurant. Making tips, this is how she makes her living. Here's how she described one customer service situation.
Like just the other day, this lady was like, oh, the chrome on the jukeboxes are, like, it's not clean enough. And so my sons were touching it and it's really, really gross. And it's like, I'm sorry, like, and then she's like, will you give me a rag? And like, I got a rag and she like cleaned it for a second. She's like, ugh, and like got all pissed off. And she's like talking about complaining to corporate. And it's like, well, we were about to clean it like that day. Like, you just caught us on a bad day.
Understandable, right? I mean, you can see a perspective. Customer asked for a rag. What did she do? She gave her a rag. and then the customer gets all pissed off and going to complain to corporate. But the customer didn't want a rag. What did the customer want? You know that. Because you've come to the Crowne Plaza. You know what services. You've probably been to a luxury automobile dealership. You've shopped at a Nordstrom's. What does she think of customer service? It's a vending machine, right? You put in your dollar, you point C3, you get it. The smile is optional, right? It's point and click. You ask for a rag, I got your rag. What's the big deal, right? It's a different world. See, oftentimes what we do is we imagine them to be miniature versions of us. When I came into the classroom as a young teacher, I realized a huge generation gap because I looked at my students as just miniature versions of myself. I was only, 5 years older than they were. So what happened? I just taught them the way I was taught because the golden rule says do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But what if who you're doing it to doesn't want what you want? Then what you're doing is creating distance. The platinum rule says do unto others as they would have done unto them. That means that we have to understand who they are. We had to better understand that this generation is different than us. The world has changed so rapidly, it continues to change. We used to look at generations in terms of 15 and 20-year segments between birth markers. I was the first guy to ever write a book on the emerging generation. And back then, we just started looking at baby boomers. Well, I was born between, the end of World War II and prior to the Kennedy assassination. That's a huge span of time. You look at generations now and, is it X, is it Z, is it double A? Where are we, right? Because things have changed so fast. So when I started talking about Generation Y, we were talking about 18-year-olds. Now if I looked at Generation Y, or say you're born after 1980, millennials, this mysterious generation. How many people in this room were born after 1980? Raise your hand. Look around the room. See, there's a lot of millennials in the room, and probably more than just raised their hand, because they're right now going, what do you want me to raise my hand, dude, right? See, I'm getting it. I get that. I know it. So what does that mean? That means we have people more than ever before coming into the workplace that think about me, myself, and I. They're wrapped up in what I call the teen me bubble, where they're thinking constantly about me issues. What are me issues? Well, they're thinking about me and my school and my friends and my fashion and my love interests naturally and my car and my music and of course my money and the things that I have, my special hobbies and stuff and of course the awards that I have. And what happens is it's me, 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 me. The next thing you know, everything gets crowded out because they're constantly looking at a perspective called me. And what CTE gets the opportunity to do is go in and smash that me bubble. Because when you smash the me bubble, what happens is all of a sudden, people can look outside the world and think, how is the choices that I'm making right today, how does that affect the company I'm working for? Or maybe the people that I work with, or perhaps the boss that I report to. How do the choices I'm making right today maybe affect the customers, the people that frequent this business, this organization, or maybe the world around me? Maybe I'm not the center of the universe. Things go around me. See, I think the first obligation of CTE is to break the me bubble, because it's not just you and what you're doing in your world that matters. It's how do your choices affect other people. So think about the words that we just came up with. You know, we're talking about reliability and professionalism and integrity and all that. It's not just, hey, you want to be an honest person. Why? Because if you're dishonest, this is what will happen to you. Instead of that, it's just like, well, let's kind of look at how dishonesty affects the world around you, right? How does being an honest person affect the world around you? The way that your businesses perceive you and your friends and your peers, etc. It's more than just you. It's what are you putting out there? What about reliability? You know, we all want, everybody wants, I want to turn on my cell phone, I want it to work. By golly, I want a signal. Yeah. And when your boss puts you on the schedule for 1 o'clock in the afternoon, he doesn't want you to show up at 1:08. Just like you don't want to wait for 8 minutes to get a signal. What does reliability mean? When you say, I've got your back, does that mean you really got somebody's back? In good times and bad, what does that look like? And see, I think CTE gives us this real-world opportunity to begin discussing really relevant topics. How is what you're doing every single day affecting more than just you, but the world around you? This is the optimum time to really develop and inculcate those Solid core work ethic values that every employer demands, regardless of what company, what industry, what level. It just doesn't matter. They're in high demand and short supply, and we have the opportunity to do that. If all you're doing in your career and tech education programs are teaching the hard skills, you're doing a disservice to the people who are working for you, and definitely the employers down the line, because as I heard right today at the Nerdery, this is a very, do you know what the Nerdery, do you know who the Nerdery works for? Do you know one of their clients is Google? They do tech work for Google. Do you know how good you have to be? We can train the skills. We can train the technical skills. Bring us people with soft skills. Bring us a positive, enthusiastic person who will show up for work on time. Someone that dresses and conducts themselves like a professional, who will respect our rules and our culture, who we can trust, and who will go above and beyond the standard no matter what to provide great service to our clients and each other. You bring us that kind of a person, we'll teach the technical skills. Break the me bubble. Strategy number 2, pardon me if I brag, but I happen to be a bit of an art connoisseur, and when I see great art, I love to capture it on film. This to me was gorgeous. It might seem kind of simple to you, but it's an elegant blue seashell encased in this massive porcelain. I was studying it, wondering what is the function of that blue seashell in the men's urinal. Right before me at a Denny's, there it was. And I was like, wow, why did they put this blue seashell here? It kind of confused me. I can't just move on. I had to find out. So I called the manufacturer of this particular model, Sloan, called the 1-800 number, went through a series of prompts. I finally got to a sales rep, Diana. I said, Diana, do you realize that you have a seashell encased inside porcelain in one of your units at a men's bathroom in Denny's, Golden, Colorado? She said, yes, Mr. Chester, you're talking about one of our most popular models. Why is this so popular? And she said, well, it actually is very functional. I said, functional? She says, yes, that helps keep the bathroom 83% cleaner. At least that's what our research shows us. I said, art? Keeping the bathroom 83%? How does that work? Long silence. Finally, she said, Mr. Chester, let's just say we've given men a target. Oh, there we go. Boom. Establish the target. Now, when we talk about target, what are we talking about? Well, a moment ago, I asked you to write down the words that you thought your employers really wanted from you if they were hired. So we stand in this gap. We're trying to help people get successful, meaningful careers and career and tech education. What words did you write down? Well, let me ask you a question. If the students in your programs right now, if the students that were in your programs, whether or not they've ever met you, were in here, and I asked them the same question I just asked of you. I said, okay, you're preparing for careers in fill in the blank. What do you think your employers really want from you? Here, just give me 5 words. I'll give you 30 seconds. And they wrote down lists of 5 words. How close would their list be to the words you just wrote down? They exactly alike? Kind of different? Way different? Or as different as East is from West? Because if they're that different, you got a mess. There's no target. See, what happens is when you have a target, you go, these are the things, this is what employers want. This is where we're going with this CTE. This is what you'll be able to do. This is the focus, and you begin inculcating that into your educational programs. And regardless of what you're teaching, whether you're teaching auto body or cosmetology, marketing occupations, computer input, health technology, I don't know. It doesn't matter, does it? It all begins with this base of this is what my employers are really, really looking for. And we talk about it. Yeah? It's something that is infused into our lessons, so we don't just leave it up to chance and just hope that they were raised in a good home, right? Are we inculcating those values, establish the target? Now I realized as I started going from school to work transition, I was dealing with more organizations, trying to help them figure out how they could deal with a workforce that they weren't really all that thrilled with. And I had taken my eye off the ball, and I just said, I want to go back and create something for students. So at the time, I had a couple of teenagers, and I decided I was going to write a book so that they could read and realize these were the 7 values that employers really wanted from them, right? Because they come into the workplace, and oftentimes they're just getting a job, and they're not coming in thinking career, they're thinking car. Maybe they're thinking car speakers. And they wonder, when is that career going to happen? I don't know. How do you answer that? Career going to happen at 23 or 33 or 43? You know what the answer is? The career happens when you babysit that first kid, when you deliver that first newspaper, because your career is a body of work, and everything you do here affects you there. And what you do here affects you there. And someday you stand back and go, wow, this is my body of work. It doesn't just happen someday. So I wanted to create a program, a curriculum that helped them realize that if you bring your best into the workplace, regardless of what that is, it's going to work out in your best interest. So don't just show up, bring your A game. Bring your A game to work. So the A game started as just a dialogue, words written on a sheet of paper that meant those 7 values. But I wanted to articulate them. Why not articulate them with the letter A? So instead of positive, what about the attitude? Instead of just being reliable, how about your attendance? Instead of just being professional, let's talk about your appearance, right? Initiative, that's your ambition, right? Respect, we're talking about your acceptance. Acceptance of the rule, acceptance of authority, integrity, that's your accountability in the workplace. And what comes down to gratitude, that's showing your appreciation, whether or not that customer is nice to you or that coworker. It's just demonstrating your appreciation every single day. So when you win at work, you embody these principles, you win at work, guess what? You win at life. So I took and I wrote a book, and it was simply called Bring Your A Game to Work. It was a teen book. Later on, I was asked by some of the companies and organizations that I work for, hey, we hire more 20-something. So I wrote the book, Bring Your A Game to Work, for adults. This one is for young people who really haven't figured out, kind of maybe they haven't had their first employment opportunities. These people have, and maybe they've developed some bad habits. But together, it was just a book. Then I called in leading educators from across the country. I said, we got to develop a program. You can't just tell somebody to be honest. We need activities, and we created an entire curriculum. A curriculum based around these soft skills. How do you teach reliability? All we know how to do is punish them when they're not reliable. How do you teach that? How do you inculcate those core work ethic values? So the teachers began creating assignments, lesson plans. We've got activity books now with hundreds of activities and PowerPoints. It's a whole curriculum that takes people through and introduces them to the soft skills. I'm not standing here saying you've got to have this, but if you don't have a soft skills program, maybe it's something you want to look at. So the Center for Work Ethic Development was founded about 6 years ago. We now have training in about 400 or 500 different high schools or in several colleges. We train returning military veterans. We have a program from them. Heck, the Kingdom of Bahrain bought our curriculum because they're really struggling with work ethic over there. It may be something you want to look at. So you might look at the Center for Work Ethic Development. By the way, I see a lot of people taking copious notes and trying to write everything. By the time this program is over, I'll give you my entire slide deck and all the notes. So if you just want to relax, you can. Let's move on to strategy number 3. 4 simple words. I'll give you the whole thing. Here we go. 4 simple words. Say them with me. Make instruction clearly matter. Will you say that? Should be mandatory for everybody who ever goes into the classroom. Make instruction clearly matter. Why? Because the kid code exists. I learned it when I was teaching. The kids code simply says the only things that matter to me are those things which matter to me. So if what you're teaching doesn't matter to me, it just doesn't matter to me. Right? Whoa! We all knew it when we were kids, but yet we expect young people to just hang on every one of our words. When I say make instruction clearly matter, it's very simple. One of my clients, again in a restaurant space, was really struggling with attendance, one of the core values. The students the young employees just were not showing up. They weren't calling in. They had tumultuous turnover with management because management was tired of the scheduling problems. Eric, come in and help us solve this problem. I'll pull out my trusty little iPhone, go in and start talking to the young employees and go, hey, why don't you start by telling me about your attendance policy? Listen what this one young lady told me.
I was late today. And being late, that means that, well, I don't know. Maybe you get a write-up when you're late. And well, if you're constantly late, you get a write-up. And if you're super late, you have to call in. But if you're like 5 minutes late, it's okay, but they're gonna have a long face with you, kinda. So it depends on the person. If you have a good excuse, then it's okay.
Is she delightful, yes or no? Yes. Of course! Do you know what the attendance policy is at this restaurant where she works? Neither does she. Have you ever heard a more nebulous, ambiguous answer? Right? I was late today, and when you're late, she smiles, you get a write-up. It's almost like, hallelujah, I got a write-up. Right? Well, you know, maybe they might give you the dreaded what? Doesn't it just humiliate you? It depends upon who's working. Because you got Alice out there, and Alice is really mean. Ralph says, hey, no big deal, pull my finger. Inconsistency. But then, of course, if you have a good excuse, then it's... See, the first part of making instruction clearly matter is to make it clear. Everyone's got to know, crystal clear, so clear that everybody can repeat it to somebody else who can repeat it to somebody else, and they can come back and tell you, and it's perfect, right? It's not hard and complex. We don't want to add more rules. We want to make sure that the rules that we have are abided by. So you make it crystal clear. So in an organization, what does reliability look like here? What does honesty really look like here? What does being positive? What does being a great customer? What does that really look like? In the classroom, how are we reinforcing those core values? Not just punishing people who are late. How are we celebrating the people who are punctual and on time? How are we celebrating the people who are honest, going above and beyond? What do we do? Well, that's it. That's making instruction, first of all, very clear, right? We got to make it crystal clear. But then, of course, we got to make it matter. Making it clear is one thing. Making it matter is something else. So the book that I wrote back in 2002 was simply called Employing Generation Y, Understanding, Managing, and Motivating Your New Workforce. It's the first book ever written on millennials, and it's 228 pages. Still sells on Amazon for $24.95, but if you want this book, I'll give it to you for free. You have to read it in the PDF form, but I'll send you the PDF. If you like to read 228 pages. If you don't want to read 228 pages, let me just tell you what it says. It simply says they, meaning your students, aren't going to do the what until they get the why. They're not going to do the what unless they know the why. They're not going to do the what unless they know the why. So you can't just give them the what and then say, because I said so. That's not a good enough why. So before you give the what, give the why. Explain. Here's why we do what we do. This is what research tells us. This is what our customers have said. This is what makes people successful. Let me give you some facts and statistics behind that. I'll give you the what, and I'll tell you why it's important to do it. Because when you combine the two, now all of a sudden people get it. So if you want to copy this book, I'll give this to you too. Employing Generation Y. Understanding, managing, and motivating your new workforce. It's based upon the theory that if you attach the rationale to what we're asking them to do, they'll jump through amazing hoops to provide it. Closing story, point number 4. It's very simple. I got into this profession maybe the same reason you did. Well, for me, it was kind of an accident. You see, I was back in high school and I wanted to learn to drive, so I signed up for a course called DE. I thought it was driver's education. Turned out to be distributive education because back then that's what the marketing program was called, distributive education. And when I went into this classroom in this lower income, high school in Jefferson County, I met a teacher that was like no other. The teacher's name was Brent Davies, and Brent Davies looked different than the other teachers. I don't know, maybe it was his thick pop bottle glasses, but he was out in a temporary building, like a trailer, and he had it painted, and it was just totally different than any other classroom. But there was something different about Brent Davies. I started looking through the yearbook, and my sister's yearbooks, who graduated before and after me, and I had all these pictures of Brent Davies, and every single one of them, you know what I noticed about Brent Davies? It was so unique. What do you think it was? The dude always has a tie on. And I figured, well, boy, that was back in the 70s, and all teachers wore ties, right? Well, not according to the yearbook, because as I started paging through, I realized that most teachers wanted to be cool, hip, like Mr. Cotter, right? So they weren't wearing the coats and the ties. But every time you saw Brent Davies, the guy had on a tie and a coat. Because we were 5 miles from downtown Denver, but it might as well have been 50 miles. Because we were just out, just far enough away, we would never really be experiencing what business was all about. That's why he opted to be out in a temporary building. That's why when you go into his classroom, he had display counters that he had donated from various merchants, and the cash register, and you would see mannequins in there, and no matter where you'd look, you'd see elements of business. He'd put the Wall Street Journal pages on the wall. We talk about stuff because this was a different environment, and he was a different kind of guy. Not just the way he looked, but the way he spoke. He spoke businessy. I mean, the guy always wore a tie. I played football. I remember coming to a football game one night. He's like, please come and watch me, Mr. Davies. Come and watch a football game. It was like the middle of the game, and I look up in the bleachers. It's about 30 degrees outside, and I see him sitting up there. Dude's got a tie on. I didn't know if he even had a neck. But I remember he had an impact on me because the guy would pull me aside constantly. I don't know what it was, but he kind of related. And I don't know, after a while, all of a sudden it stuck. I decided, hey, why not, huh? You can't beat him, join him. See, Brent Davies was the kind of CTE educator that maybe you had. A guy that said, we're not going to let the circumstances of a bad budget interfere in developing the people that come through my program and my classroom. And there was this metric that he used, this way of getting in your grill. See, the average kid in today's world spends between 3 and 5 minutes in meaningful dialogue with their mom or dad. I'll say it again, the average kid spends 3 to 5 minutes a day in any kind of meaningful dialogue with their mom or dad. But that same kid is going to spend between 5 and 7 hours in front of a screen. Now, it could be a television screen or a movie screen, but odds are it could be the computer screen or maybe even that smart screen. What a child grows up with, they accept or they reject, is what they grow up without that becomes profoundly important to them. And what I learned from Mr. Davies is the importance of going 18 inches. The 18 inches between your nose and their nose is because that's where the learning really takes place. There is no computer that can substitute for the relationship between an educator and a student, because we are, at the very core, the architects of the soul. That's what I got out of Brent Davies, and the hardest presentation I've ever given in my life, with 3,000 presentations, was delivering his eulogy in 2004, because at age 57, he passed just a little too soon. And I wrote a poem for Mr. Davies, and I'll share it with you. Before I do, let me tell you how you can get in touch with me. If you're interested in any of this stuff, you can find me on Facebook, just at revivingworkethic.com if you like the page, or you happen to like the kind of articles that I write, and I try to always come up with something interesting, share 2 or 3 a month on my blog. You can click this little graphic funky thing if you have that QR reader on your smartphone. It'll take you right there. If you either like my Facebook page or subscribe to my blog and send me an email, and this is the final part, you got to say, hey, Eric, I subscribed, or I liked your Facebook page. If you just send me an email, I'm going to send you back a link that has that first video we watched on it. It's got the ebooks on it. It's got my slide deck. It's got articles. It's got white papers. But you have to do one of the two. You have to go to Reviving Work Ethic, or you have to like my blog, or both, and send me an email and say, I did it. It's just very simple. I will click and send it your way. If you have any suggestions for me improving this presentation, please do that as well. If you do any of that stuff, I'm happy to help you. I will finish with the poem that I wrote for Brent Davies. This was many years ago, and sometimes I get a little emotional when I write it, but I think it means something to people who chose to do what we do. It goes like this. I could have chose a glamour job where the spotlight was on me. I could have climbed the corporate ladder and been a captain of industry. I could be working in a downtown lab or a fancy office with city views, or in a lab somewhere where the world was awaiting the latest word of my breakthroughs. But instead, I heard another call, faint whispers from the in-betweens. I could have turned and walked away, but instead I chose to work with teens. For it's kids who seem to need my help, a path I'm called to help them find. For they're the ones who'll decide our fate and right the wrongs we've left behind. If success is measured in bank accounts, then I'm a soul by modest means, but if touching lives is what it's truly all about, then I'm glad I chose to work with teens. Minnesota Career and Tech Educators, thanks for having me here today. I'll be outside signing some of my books if you're interested. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you very much. Thank you. You guys are awesome. Appreciate it.